logic within the methods, right? Logic that we don't want outside classes to temper, right? So, for example, if you are writing a code for a bank, right, SBI or whoever, right, they have some logic to calculate the home loan interest. Let's take an example. That logic they don't want anyone to kind of mess around with, right? That logic is closely guarded. It has to be reviewed any number of times, and then only they want to change it if there is a change required. Right? So encapsulation is hiding certain things and allowing certain things to be exposed. Right? Very simple. How does Java do that? The access specifiers, private, public, and protected. Right? There is something called package private also. It's very obscure, so we will not get into it. Now the first feature that we are going to look at is the interface private methods. Right? So till now, if you look at Java 8, everything in interface, it's public. It's like a remote. Whatever you put there, it goes public. Right? People can access that. Now, what happened is Java 8 also added things like default methods, right, and static methods, right. So now you can write code within your interface. Okay, with that comes the need of protecting certain logic from those methods, right? Because now I want to write a method which is ideally should be placed in the interface, but then I'm concerned that okay, no, this method can be easily be overridden because interface it's public, right? How do I protect that? So in Java 9, Java introduced something called private methods. Right? So now what you can do is you can write the default methods and only the piece which you want to protect from that you can create a new method. Simple. Right? That method can be private. So that method cannot be overridden. That logic cannot be tampered with. Okay? It's fairly simple. And so this is one feature that got added in Java 9, I believe, yes. And it's very useful when you are setting up a project, when you are designing a project, because that's when you create new interfaces. That's when you decide what needs to be exposed, what doesn't need to be exposed. Right. So this is a feature which will help you at the time of design, not probably when the project is in maintenance phase, but yeah, most of it mostly at that. Right. Okay. We'll move on to the next feature. Right. OS is going to show us this type inference.
So, hi guys, my name is Aves Meman. I am currently working here as a software trainee, and today I am going to cover a topic which was introduced in Java 10, which is local variable type inference. But to know and understand what was the need for it, let's understand something else first. So, firstly, what is a strongly typed language and what is a loosely typed language? Can anybody just a brief?
Anybody working in JavaScript, TypeScript? Okay, mostly Java people. No?
Yes. Okay. So,
No JavaScript.
the main difference between loosely typed and a strongly typed language is that loosely typed language allows us to declare variables without specifying the type. On the other hand, in a strongly typed language, you need to explicitly specify that you are declaring a string or you are declaring a int variable. So, in loosely typed language, the compiler does this job for us. As you can see the example, in the left hand side, you can see an example from Java where I'm declaring a string and then I'm declaring an int. I have explicitly specified that it's a string and it's an int. On the other hand, this is the example of TypeScript where I've only written let and just declare. The compiler knows that foo is an int and bar is a string. But the downside of loosely typed languages that errors are caught at runtime. The compiler cannot detect errors beforehand, and strongly typed language detects it. But the advantage that a loosely typed language gives is more flexibility to the developer. So, to implement that feature, Java introduced local variable type inference. But as there is a downside to loosely typed language, the scope of this feature is limited to method specific. So you cannot use this variable type inference everywhere in the code. So let me show you through hands-on how this is done. So here I have a plain class and a main method. So this was the way earlier we used to declare variables. Now, after the introduction of local type variants, where keyword was introduced, and now I can declare a variable without specifying the type. But Java limits that feature at method level. So if I try to declare a variable here at class level, this will show me an error. So this is how Java implements this feature but maintains the security by limiting the scope. Well, you can also declare a reference variable like this. Some more things to note are if I only declare a variable, the compiler won't know what is the type of that variable. So it will give me an error. Even if I try to do this, it still give me an error because this roll number is not initialized at compile time. So the only way is by declaring and also initializing the variable. Now, if I try null, this again will show an error. Why? Can anybody guess or tell me why this is showing an error?
Because null is a very value for any time.
Yeah. So the compiler won't know that what type of variable I'm declaring. Null can be assigned to a number of objects. So this won't work also. Now we can also use to declare a collection object, let's say an array list. This will also work fine. But there is also one thing to note that if I declare a variable like this, what kind of problems can I face? Can anybody? Yeah. So the variable itself knows that it is an array list, but array list is of a generic type. So I can add anything in this array list, and this can lead to runtime errors. So it is recommended to use this. Always specify the type whenever you are using variable. Var. So
Can't we do the same thing with object class?
yeah,
If I replace where keyword with object, still it will work or not? I'm not sure. I have never tried. It's just a question.
No, because
Can we?
in the primitive you can define the where, but you cannot define the object.
And if I do it with new keyword,
Keyword,
new string or new integer as a wrapper class,
it's not.
The wrapper
then
class
while where
wrapper class you are talking about.
any object
Yes.
with the where keyword we are talking about the loosely typed uh, object. So same thing is achievable with object class as well, I believe.
Yes. When you have to have an object, but where is it spans across the primitives also. I mean, you can just say where number is equal to 1. That's it. Done. So see, it's ease of use. By the feature itself, you will understand that the purpose of this feature is ease of use. Without this feature, Java was not losing any capability. It has been added to make the life easier for programmers. With taking a little bit of risk, right? Which he mentioned that even if you don't just use the diamond operator, right? Don't specify the type. Java will allow you, the compiler will allow you, but there is a risk of getting a runtime error because then anything can come out of that error list, right? So risk has been taken, but then there are efforts to contain the risk also. Now, why this inference type inference is not at the class level? Because at class level, its scope is too wide, right? The other classes can also be using that variable. Now, if there is a surprise of the thing that is coming out of that variable, it's going to hurt a lot of things. The reason behind keeping it local within the method is a couple of things, right? One, it has limited scope. Second, if you look at some practicality around how we work in the projects, methods are usually worked on by one single developer. That developer knows what goes into this variable and what comes out of this variable. Right? Classes, on the other hand, they are kind of many people are working on that over a period of time. So it's a risk and reward trade-off that has been taken, right? What you are saying is right. Object class, because it's like at the top of the hierarchy, can give you similar flexibility, but it's more of ease of use because now you just have to say var and don't care about whether it's object that you are assigning or it's a primitive that you are assigning.
Or maybe it is so for the feasibility of the TypeScript developers.
Main benefit
Could
what,
be.
sorry,
Yeah, good.
what I found is that somebody, mostly other team members are working in different classes, right? They have created method. So for example, I create where and I need to set the data. This I'm aware about okay, set will be the some method. I don't know what is the return type. So this time mostly we are using where when we fetching a data. So automatically either it's list or it's a single object or any of that, it automatically will be there.
Even in that case also we have to do a typecast. What if we are returning a string and on the other hand while on a corner side we are expecting a
But interview may
will leave a typecast.
but still builder in this application as you are mentioning here what method we need to add an additional check what kind of variable it is.
Hmm.
So
You will need a typecast.
Like I don't know what method is going to be done. But when I need to use it. It's not an object of anything. Like if I want to use it, I need to keep a check. So basically this is an issue with the JavaScript that is there. Like when we are using a where keyword, in the method as a parameter, we don't know what kind of value it is going to generate. It's an integer string, so we have to keep a check. If it's a string, then it's just not to fail because it will accept an integer.
The entire reason the TypeScript exists is because of this thing, right? The JavaScript is so loosely typed that it creates a mess. It's difficult to understand JavaScript if it has been there for 5 years and so many people have worked on it. Now TypeScript came in, tightened those screws a little bit that okay, you can't do everything, anything, right? So Java has taken the similar approach that you can't do it. It's a middle ground.
Maybe it's for the visibility of the TypeScript developers.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether TypeScript developers are ever going to get into Java.
Another question is like you need a new list if I can do, but what if I do new list equals to list? That's a variable itself. Will it work?
New list?
Equals to list. Let's define the direct list.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it should work. Also within JavaScript, so because where is the JavaScript? Like for example, like we will where list that number equals to 1 to 3. Now for the same number, can I assign a string in the nice sense?
I'm not getting it.
So at first I declared where number equals to 1 to 3.
Yes.
After some modification or something, I want to have a value of number equals to some string.
Okay. So
Is
can
that possible?
can it change
Same
variable
variable
values?
values.
Yes. Yes. So I think it can. If you so for example, you are saying that right now the list is an array list. Can it become a map after a few nights?
Can we just use the practical?
Yes. Let's do that. Just assign list is equal to new map of something.
Just a new string.
Yeah, literally.
Just say string something.
Just string.
Yes. Okay. So I think the compiler has yes.
So my question is, ideally with the scope of where and the business JavaScript being usually coupled, was also that you can store any kind of object in the variable at any point in time. That is actually losing control. That same variable can be stored in an integer at one point in time. You can store a string at another point of time. You can store a boolean at some other point of time. The same variable.
Correct. Now the point is that this feature has been inspired by, as I mentioned earlier, inspired from a loosely coupled, loosely typed language, but the feature is type inference. It's not about removal of type; it's type inference. Now the compiler has a feature to infer the type from the assignment when you are declaring it. So what it does is when you are declaring it, whatever the value has been assigned, the compiler infers the type. You don't have to mention the type, compiler will infer the type. Now in this case, the type has been inferred as array list, right? And that's done. After that, if you assign something else, it's not getting through.
So my question is sort of this question: what is the actual real life use of it? Because if we are using this variable keyword type inference, then next time we need to check what kind of object. Because if you want to use this somewhere, anyhow, we need to check that it's not required.
No, the type is fixed.
Then it will show where if you are particular object, then it will show us like what kind of object it is. So ideally it will show because of the intelligence and intelligence that we have. But my point is it actually helping us?
So the thing is, you do not have to check the type. So type has been defined or decided by the compiler at the time of declaration. So with declaration, you have to initialize also. Right?
See what we first is some method is returning something. I don't know what kind of data is being returned. And that was if I'm using that, it makes sense. Like I don't know because API can be third party API, something that I haven't worked on. Some client API, that I'm not aware what kind of data is going to come. It's a black box for me. It can be some APIs do mention, but if I'm not sure about the data that is going to be, I can use the one. But once the data is returned, I need to use it. You can directly use one for each loop. But if it's a list, then what if it's a string or a number or a boolean?
So the point is, we want to Java does not want to move it out of the method. That's why it's local type inference. Everything is local to the method. It should not spill out of the method. Then your concern is right, and that's the same reason why they have not put it at the class level. Because people using out who are not familiar with that class, it could be a library, right? Where there is a public. What if you have a library with public var variable which can be accessed from outside? They don't know what's in the class, so they'll be clueless. So that's why this is local. This is not loosely typed. This is type inference, right? So that's the feature. Local type inference, right? It's local to the method, and type is inferred by the compiler itself at the time of declaration because you have to initialize that and that. So that's the entire feature. More of a usability feature within the method. Right? It makes it easy for developers. Think. Yes. Okay. So now go back to the PPT. Okay. So next, Yash is going to cover the switch statement. Now, switch statement has been there since probably inception of Java, right? If you have read books about design patterns, good practices, etc., they have a mixed opinion about whether it's a good practice to use switch statement or it's not. Yeah. The point is, and often where they go is one is that the switch statements become very cumbersome to write and very complicated. That is one. Second thing, as soon as you put in switch statement, now you have an easy way to put lot of logic in that method. So methods become very complex, right? So there are mixed opinions about it. So what Java is trying to do with this is making switch statement easier to use. At least take out the one problem with this switch statement. Right? So uh, that's what we are going to cover now.
Yes. So good morning. So as we know that along with the new releases there are new features, but there are also updates in the existing language features. So like as in switch statement. Okay. So now from JDK onwards, 14 onwards, we'll be able to have null case. Also, we can also add in a single case we can have multiple parameters which are separated by a comma. Okay. Also, we can use the switch statement as an expression. Okay. So these are the recent and most significant improvements from JDK 14 onwards. So let's see the examples. Yeah.
And in most of the features that we discuss now, uh, they are much more. I mean, you will not see the value when you look at that feature in an isolation, right? But they become much more powerful when you use it in the combination, right? You'll see features which allow construct to be used within a stream. Java, you know streams, right? Streams are very compact way, lambda expressions and all those things. Now Java is enabling and making the syntactical changes so that everything can be used in streams and lambdas and all. So you'll see other features also, which are small changes, but that allows them to be used in combination with the other features. So that's when it becomes more powerful.
Yes. So also there is an syntax update. So instead of here, as you can see here, we are using colon, right? So instead of this colon, colon was replaced by an array, arrow syntax. Okay, just like we use in lambda expressions, right? So here, let me show you. So here what we can use is, in case one, we have to use this. Okay. So instead of colon was replaced by an arrow, right? And also one important thing to note, if you have noticed here, is that when using this arrow syntax, we can skip the break statement. Okay, so now break is not a compulsory or explicitly we have to write. Okay, so from the developer's perspective, it is useful. A few lines is less, right? Also, as I mentioned earlier, we can have a multiple case, like we can also by a comma separator we can have multiple parameter in a single case. Yes. Also, here is an example of using the null case. Right? We can have a null. Okay. Now, the other thing is that how we can use the switch as an expression, right? So generally, what we are doing is whenever we are using the switch, we are generally doing system.out, or we are assigning a variable and okay. So, but now what we can do is here, as you can see in this example, we can directly uh, assign the what will be the result of this switch. We can directly assign it in the variable, right? So for the developer's perspective, it will be very much easier. Also, to if you look at this code, it is much more easy to understand. The reliability is very good, clutter free. Okay. So these are the advantages and the recent updates in the switch statement.
I feel like one more advancement is that within the switch statement, when I'm using case, I can pass an object within the instead of integer or a string, I can
Yes.
pass an object as a parameter.
Yes, yes.
So
So
the case it will check for the integer type, string type.
yes, yes. So that will I will cover in the next topic, which is the pattern matching. In pattern matching, I'll cover all those examples as well. Let me just give you an overview that what is in pattern matching. Okay? So in pattern matching, what we do is we compare a structure of an object to a particular type, whether it can be in class or in an interface, right? So in Java, what we have been doing is that we are using the instance of operator, right, to compare, right? So if we see an example, yes. So here shape is an interface. We have a circle and a rectangle class. Okay, for an example. So this is the way how we were using it. Okay, the instance of operator, but the necessary condition was that we then have to declare a new reference variable and then assign this. We have to cast it explicitly the rectangle into a rectangle and then declare a new reference variable and assign the value. Okay. So now with pattern matching, what we can do is we just have to write an variable here. So what it will do is it will first of all check the type of this target variable. Here this shape is known as the target variable, and if it returns to true of a rectangle type, then it will automatically create a reference variable r, and this r can be used in this scope of if condition. Okay, so here as you can see we have used this r to access the methods of points. Okay, so one another condition is that how we can use this pattern matching in a specific way. So one condition is that, for example, if you want to, uh, have a more refined answer, if you want to refine your answers more, if you want to add in some extra condition checks, okay. So we can also have on guard conditions, okay, which I will show you in the case of the switch example. Okay, so instead of every time writing an if condition and using this instance of operator, we can use an switch statement as we all know. So here what we have done is this shape is an shape and interface. So we have to, in cases we have to write the classes, okay, which implement this shape interface, correct? But the one important condition to remember is that all the possible cases should be mentioned if we are not writing a default statement. Okay. So here if I comment out this, so as you can see in the switch, it will show that either I should insert a default statement, or what I should cover all the possible cases, right? So this is the one thing that we should remember.
So basically, if you look at this, right, and try and imagine how you would do otherwise in Java 8 world, is that you first do a switch on S, right? It's a shape. Then do case, and then you write the entire instance of. Right? And if S is instance of circle, something like that, then you have to write an if condition. If you just want to simulate this in Java 8, right? Now within this case, you have to write an if condition, saying that if circle area is this and that, then you do a large circle, right? So there will be a block of logic. Now everything is in one line, right? Your instance of has been removed, right? It directly understands that okay, I need to do this, and the with additional condition, you can remove the entire if, right? So the if with that the switch statements become very lean, one liners, easy to understand, right? Very logical.
If multiple lines we have to write, then we need to make it only.
Yes, then you have to go your old ways, right? Uh,
After arrow, we need to write it only, or how?
so like what you used to do with colon, same thing.
Yes. So also as I talked earlier about the guard conditions, right? To refine your answers. Okay. So here is one example. So if here this reference variable is of type circle. Okay. So if it returns to 2, it will enter this case, and we have used this bitwise AND operator, right? So here these conditions are known as guard conditions. We are further refining the answers. So it is like a general use case to use that. Okay. So now coming to one another topic is dominance. Okay. So as a Java developer, many of are handling the exceptions in Java, right? So here what we have is uh, we cannot handle a parent class exception and then specify it. Okay, so we cannot have in the first case exception and then handle the IO exception, right? It will throw an error. Okay. So similarly here, when we are using pattern matching with switch, we have to remember that, for example, base class. We have a base class which is a and a derived class. Okay, so we cannot handle write a case in which the base class is handled first and the derived class is later handled in the next case. So yes. So here is an example. We have a base class. This derived class is extending the base class. Okay. So we have first declared this. So if I change the order, it will show me this error. Okay. So it will show that the label is dominated by the preceding label, right? So this is what is known as dominance. Okay. So so as we have seen that by using this, the updating the switch statement, and by using this pattern matching, we can save a few lines of code, right? We can make the code more readable. So now in the next topic, we'll see that how not just a couple of statements, but we can uh, improve the code by up to 80 or 100 line of codes. Okay, so in that, always will talk to you about that.
So, hi once again. Now I'm going to talk about another feature, Java Records, which was introduced in Java 16. So, what is the need for Java Records? To understand that, we need to kind of get some more info, like what is an MVC? Can anybody? MVC, I'm sure yeah. Model view controller. So it's an architectural pattern which divides your app into three logical components, which is model view and controller. So Java also uses that MVC framework, and it also implements those. And we will talk about model component, which is also implemented by Java as a POJO. I'm sure a plain old Java object. So I'm sure you all have seen a plain old Java object. Uh, Let me just refresh you about it. So yeah, as you can see, POJO, which has certain private fields, no args constructor, all args constructor, getter setter methods, overridden methods equals hash code to string. So you can see it's almost 70 lines of code, and no developer wants to write this again and again and again. It's a boilerplate. So this problem is so prevalent that communities have came up with their own shortcuts. Like this ID also provides one shortcut. If I declare another POJO, say object, and just declare some fields, and then I just right click, generate constructor, no args constructor, then again all args constructor and getter setter methods. So I have saved a lot of keystrokes, but still it's a work to do. I need to click, then type. There is also another third-party library, which is Lombok. I'm sure everyone has heard it, in which you can use on annotations to pretty much ease your job by just putting an annotation here. So this was the case prior to Java 16. In Java 16, Java introduced records. So now you can do it like this. Public record. This pretty much does the job. The single line of code is equivalent to this. Show you an example. So as you can see, it has created a constructor automatically. It also creates accessor methods for all the private fields that I have declared. It also creates overrides equals method, hash code method, toString method. So this is how we use records, but there are some things that we need to know before using record. So I just said that you can use record as a reduction of boilerplate, and you just go and replace all your POJOs with your records. So it might create problem because records are not meant to replace POJOs. The main difference between them is records are designed to be immutable. So there are no setter methods for any of the private fields. Once you create an object via the constructor, you cannot change any of the fields. So it depends on your use case when to use a record and when to use a POJO. So just to give you out a perspective, I have written a small use case. If you have say a class of bank account details, so you have some fields like account number, name, the date which was the account created. So this is meant to be consistent. This is not meant to be changed at any point of time. So you can create a record and then be done with it. Your data is safe. No one can change it by mistake also. This can also be used when you have to fetch something from a database. But you have to do calculations based on that data, but you don't need to actually change the existing data. So you can also use record in that case also. So the bottom line is records are useful, but they are not meant to replace
Basically,
POJOs.
any kind of reference data when you're loading from the database or any other systems, right? So I think you have worked in a bank. So banks have so much of reference data. Any system in the bank, if you take, right, it's connected with n number of other systems, and usually all that systems, the data is consumed, but it's more or less reference data. It's data about the account holders, data about the PII for information and whatnot, right? So all that reference data, which you don't intend to mutate, but just to use it in your calculations, all that can be taken into records. Right? So that makes it much more uh, safer to have that, because if somebody changes in your system of POJO can be changed, right? Because you can create a setter method or add one if or a hard code some return value in a POJO. In this, that cannot happen, right? So this is like closed.
So, so this record is like I'm just grabbing the data from the database and just viewing purpose. I can use this, right? It can
Yes,
be
that is
one use case.
one use case, right? But it can be anywhere where you don't want to change the data.
I don't want to change. So is record providing any sorting sort of facility which actually enhance the performance instead of if I use it in a simple photo class? See, if simple photo class, if I am getting the data of let's say 1,000 records, the same way I'm getting the data from the record from 1,000 records. So is there any chance that performance will be enhanced in the record and not in the photo or like say?
No, there's no such performance enhancement. It's just reduction of boilerplate code.
And with the question, in the POJO we can add hash code and equals method. So is it possible with that? That's the question.
It overrides.
Yeah.
I mean,
Override, but if I want to change some
Yeah, you can add your custom logic in records.
things, I want to add here. Because for sorting or anything, if I want to do, I need to add this. Equals or
correct. Yes.
Okay. So moving on to the next feature, which is sealed classes. I'll hand over to Dr.
So, uh, yes. So sealed classes, again, it goes back to the concept of the encapsulation, right? Where, so right now, if you look at Java 8, right, you create a class, right? And what if you don't want uh, anyone else to extend that class? What can we do? You make it final, but that's a complete lock. You cannot be selectively final, right? When you say a class is final, it's done. There are no extension of that classes. Now sealed classes gives a middle way, okay, where you can say that only these 5 classes are my legitimate extensions, right? It's like the food franchise franchises that you see, right? Take Vipul Dudia. Okay, they will say that these are my official branches. All others should not be there, right? So likewise, Java gives you now the capability of saying that only 5 extensions, please, nothing more. Okay, so where this helps in when you are building libraries. Okay, so oftentimes what happens, you have a public class within your library, somebody using that library will override that, right? You can do make it final, but then your own usage within your library becomes very limited, correct? So now with this you can say that it's sealed only for these classes, and these classes you have implemented within your library. Nobody else can outside do anything about it, right? So it's what is the hand? So just no, it's very simple thing. So we have a simple class, right? It's a public class, right? Then there are two child, one is A and one is B. Now if this class, the parent class, if I make it, so two keywords got introduced, sealed and non-sealed. Two new keywords, right? So you can say sealed public class, and then you can say permits the name of the class, simple child A, okay, and simple child B. These two. We include these two. Okay. So now, what we have is, if I create a third class, or I mean a child is C, then it will throw out an error. Right? There is one more thing which got added, is a non-sealed class. Right? So if I want to then open up again, saying that now my simple child can have multiple extensions, so it becomes a simple public class again. So at that point, you can say this is non-sealed. So you have a parent class, you have fixed number of child classes, but then you can again say that the child one is non-sealed. Then you can have multiple n number of child. So you have two levels of control. You can control it at the parent level and then open it up again, or you can keep it logged at that point, right? So this is again the encapsulation thing where you can control the access and control the extension of the classes there, right? Go back to the, yes. So we saw the non-sealed. So again, the same thing, interfaces. You can do the same thing with the interfaces.
So what actually we mean public, right? Public seal, right?
Yes. You
This is-
okay?
So we say it's public, and then also we say it's
Yeah,
sealed.
that's okay. So now, yes, go ahead.
So either it's public and sealed or it can be.
No, I think it can be both, because public, when it what it means is it can be seen from outside. This is just stopping the extension. Sealed is about creating the hierarchy.
So we can create a simple class of the in other class. How actually we need to use? We need to use a simple class.
See, this is, it does not limit any capability of classes. It it just stops you from creating a hierarchy. The visibility of the members,
Extend.
yes, only the extension in case of interface, the implementation, the hierarchy is limited. The capability of class does not get impacted, right? Final, right? This is like a kind of stripped down final thing. That's the difference. So these are some of the
In my normal class, if I want to use a seed class, then will I have to use that class not in the normal class? Can I explain the seed class?
but you have to say permits. You have to say permits.
There is a
Add that.
compulsory header that the class has to be of.
Yes, we had to add the non-seed, right? That's what you.
That means like if I, in any particular class I want to use that class.
No. That actually should be usable. I'm not sure why it's forcing us to do a non-seed. Right. Okay. So probably I need to check that, but I think you can use it. Okay, I'll figure this out. I think, but the whole purpose is to let it extend the class, right, to a limited extent. That's the purpose. Okay. Now there are features which are very small, right? Features that we looked at right now till now were little bigger features. Now we'll look at few features which are small, right? But they again make your life easier. Right. So those are the features like text blocks, creating the collections, ease of reading and writing to the files, and the processing of the text content. Now, when you look at these features, you'll see that a lot of these features are helpful when you are processing the text, right? Either it's big data, or whether you are processing the data feeds from Twitter. Right? So right now, lot of text processing is happening across the board. Right? Python is used in most of those cases where AIML and NLP and these things are utilized, right? So, like text blocks, then reading, writing of the files, processing the text content, all these features are making it easy for you to use Java in those use cases, right? So we'll have a look at that. Okay. So this is how the evolution has happened, right? So this is what we used to do, right? And most of us still do this thing. We create a to create a set with certain values, right? This is what we do. At the end of it, it's unmodifiable set, so that nothing can change within that, right? Java 8 gave us the streams. This can be done, but again, seems very complicated to just to have a set with few values, right? So come Java 9, this got introduced. Right? So now we have uh, this new construct, right? Set of 1, 2, 3 or whatever. Right? It's fairly easy, quickly doable. You don't have to get into, I mean, this even with IDE, it's difficult to write this sentence, right? And then that's why people resort to this kind of no-brainer. Right? Uh, Now, multi-line strings. So till now we have been using these kind of separators because a line break is a new line. Sorry, it's not my coming in the way. So now a very logical thing got added: three double quotes, and you can write free form text here. Right? These two are equivalent now.
Which version?
I think this is text blocks are Java 11, if I'm not mistaken. Right. One more thing is about reading and writing the files. Though it's a small improvement, but it is an improvement. I've kind of commented this code because I had to do a lot of exception handling, IO exceptions and whatnot. It kind of cluttered the code even more. So, but let's walk through this, right? So this is boilerplate where we are creating a file. Okay, so that will stay as is even in Java 11. You create a path. This will also stay as is. But this piece, right? This piece where it forced you to read the bytes and then again convert using the files, that gets removed now, right? So all these things staying as is. What you can now do is files, write the string, give the path to the file, and you put your string in, right? Same thing about reading the files. Okay, now you can just read the file with a single method, right? Just giving the path. Okay, so this will read the entire string from this file into the content.
This file stored byte string will affect or overwrite?
Oh, come again?
File stored byte will affect or overwrite the content?
No, this will override. This writes the, these two are kind of similar, equivalent, right? So whatever this does and this does will be the same.
In Java, while opening the file, we have a variable which says whether to append or overwrite.
Correct.
Opening the file.
So
But with this single line statement in Java 11,
Correct.
number 74, what it will do?
so you are talking about
Parameters?
this place, right? This is where you could
74. He's talking about 74.
so this does not allow you to. Okay, let me see if it has more. There is a source and error. No, I don't think it has any more. No, it does not have any more parameters as such.
You know what he's saying? If file is already exists,
Hmm.
we need to make this statement that it will append end of this file or
Yes.
it will overwrite.
And
So
in,
basically,
in earlier, you could say that whether open this file in the append mode
Yes.
or in the new mode.
now
Correct. So that we'll have to figure out. I don't know how to do that with this. But that was at the time of when we opened the file, right?
Yes.
Then you start writing. The writing statement did not have whether to append or overwrite. But file was opened in the in that mode.
yes,
Correct.
yes.
So
Kind
it
of-
should correct. So what we are doing, the file is being created over here. This and this, right? So this entire thing is kind of opening a file, right, with path. We are using that path. So probably it could also be happening over here when we are creating a file to in append mode or as a new stream, right? But yeah, that thing we will have
So
to.
this path to variable of 74 is an object of path class or it's just a string of paths?
No, this. So I have commented this out. That's why it's red, but it is this.
Maybe in that we can get a suggestion.
So also there is a. Good different versions of this.
I believe they also have a write bytes method. Files also.
Hmm. So here you are saying write bytes.
They also have a write bytes method.
Okay, but then the question would be the same: does it overwrite or does it append? Okay, so that we'll figure out, and then I'm sure there is a way out of this. Right? So now there is one. I think this is second to the last. So line has now convenience methods added. Okay, so here you could do, so for example, you have a entire block that you read in contents. Right now, you have an entire block of lines in that. You want to process that. Okay, so these are certain convenience methods added, so you can directly use it in the lambda. So line dot is blank would give you true or false based on if the line is blank or not. Earlier we used to do the length, and then there would be an if condition saying that if the length is 0, then it's a blank. Make a decision, right? So instead of that, all that if condition has been shortened, is blank, right? Strip gives you a stripped text line. The front and back, the blanks are stripped, right? And then you can collect it into a list, right? So all these strip is blank used to be a multi-line operations, which are now a function, so that you can easily use in the lambda and in your string processing. So again, small features, but when you combine it with other things, it becomes much more powerful and neat. Now, if you look at this, all we want to do at this point, this entire line, is to get whatever comes out of this map into a list. Right? That's all that we want. And for that, we have to write all these things. So that also has been shortened, say, to list. Right? So probably after this also you can write to list directly.
Nothing but they have added in the string class.
So they have added.
In the strings class, right? That
Yes, yes, yes.
Previously it was, I think, Apache common YouTube string YouTube was there.
Correct. So now all these are util convenience methods you can call.
Apache YouTube, string YouTube was there.
Yes.
I think they are.
So that's why they have kind of inspired from a lot of other places, right? Making our life easier, right? Anything left? Okay. Okay. So what do we have next? Okay. What are we doing on time? Okay, we're good. Uh, so all these features, as we have seen that some of them are, and then we have intentionally taken only those features which are kind of you can directly relate to as a developer, and in your day-to-day life you can use. And as I mentioned, there are so many under the hood uh, improvements, right? We talked about Project Loom, we talked about some of the image collection improvements and all, but they are still work in progress, right? Uh, so there is a lot to gain, right, with a little bit of learning. Okay, so learning, if you see, if you want to kind of migrate from Java 8 to 18, 19, whatever, the learning is not so huge, right? For example, Java 5 to Java 8 was a huge learning gap, right? Because streams and everything you had to learn, and those were complex features, right? And some of the features we have never learned, right? Concurrent package had a lot of changes in Java 8. So and fork join framework, all these things people almost never use because they're hard to learn, right? But this gap, learning wise, it's not so much. Okay. But if you take that plunge, take that effort, right, you will be able to use the latest modern JDK and JVMs, and allowing you to get benefited from all those under the hood improvements, right? And with Oracle coming in, right, like they are very aggressive in releasing, they are very aggressive also in decommissioning things also. Okay, so Java 5 probably was 12 years old. We can still use those APIs. Okay, but Oracle, whenever they get chance, they'll decommission things. So it's good to move forward. They'll only keep those things which they have to keep so that the existing code in the market doesn't break. Everything else will be rapidly renewed and kind of they'll drop the old thing and get in the new things. Right? So with little effort you can move on. Right? And that's the whole purpose of this thing, right? Today the meetup that we had. Um, and that's pretty much it that we had to share today, right? And yes,
I have one question. Uh, Java 9 they have introduced the modularized, right? So that's the main thing. So that's
In
where
Java
actually
9.
we have a two-separate path, right? And
Yes.
that's the break the line.
Yes.
Java has break the line. Replicated, I think, applied and so many things.
So many things, yes.
RT-char and there
Yes.
are many things.
So
right?
many changes.
Yeah. So, so in Java environment also they have used the modularized and after all, I'm not aware. But
So let's give 5 minutes to that, right? Modularization.
Yeah.
So as he mentioned, Java 9, one feature is modularization, and when Java 9 got released, that feature was the feature in that release.
I would like to add, I was in PTC software and their product was reached around 125 lakhs of code. And I was part of R&D team. So we need to, at the time, they are saying that we need to migrate now onward because we also support the red newer version of Java. So they said we need to documentalize how many deprecated methods and where it's will break. So they have given an, I think, like, what forgot the name, but yeah. So we need to identify, make a report, and we found that there are so many methods is breaking, so many things are breaking because they have removed so many things. Okay. So that's why I need to also know.
So deprecation is one thing,
Yeah.
right? The modularization,
IT, network,
so many IO, some of the
IO.
IO removed, NIO was kind of made mainstream. So many things they removed, and that's what I'm saying. Java 9 was probably the first release under Oracle.
Yeah.
Right? So they are very fast in deprecating things. Right? Now, modularization, right, is a feature which, yes, it impacts us as a developer, okay, but not every developer will be using it in day to day. That's why we didn't cover that, but let me give you an idea, right? So modularization, right now what happens? Java 8, okay, even if you build a very small web app, okay, to run that web app you need entire JDK on the server, okay, entire JDK is like around more than 200 MB or that size, okay. Now your web app might be using only some of those features. Entire JDK is not needed, right? Not everybody needs RMI library. Not everyone needs NIO library and stuff like that. Then came the cloud. Okay, so till Java, before cloud, nobody had any issues because they all had their servers. Okay, once the application is up, it used to stay up for years. So for 200 MB, nobody would mind in the memory, right? So nobody would mind. Then came the cloud. Okay, with cloud came the containers. Okay, now your app. So containers, the first characteristic is they can shut down very fast. They can come up very fast. Okay, they are small. They don't have memory of 32 GB and 200 GBs like that. So they have small memory footprint. Along with that came the microservices. Everyone knows microservices. Microservices, what it does is a monolithic application which used to take 200 GB of RAM got broken down 20 microservices, each microservice taking a little bit of memory. Okay. Now imagine if each microservice to run this, you need additional 200 MB of RAM just to load the JDK. 80% of that is not used by your web application or microservice. It's too much of overhead, right? On the container, on your microservice, whatever. It slows things down. The container cannot come up very fast. So what Java and the architects of Java had to do was to make sure that only those things would be loaded that are needed by that particular module or the microservice. But now the problem was that within Java JDK itself, there were so many libraries. Now, one library didn't know that what other libraries I am dependent on. So RMI wouldn't know whether it's dependent on IO or not. So compiler, when it loads RMI library, it does not know what other libraries I need to make this thing run. Compiler knows that your web application only needs RMI. But what all things RMI what needs, compiler does not know. So what compiler did? It loaded everything so that there are no runtime errors at least. Right? And with modularization, what Java did, it modularized itself first. Okay? It's a feature which other applications can also use, but Java itself got modularized. Okay, so the now compiler does not need to load everything; it only loads what is needed. So now, if you look at the memory footprint of Java in a memory, okay, it got reduced. Okay, so faster startups, right, less memory, and all those benefits came with it. The second thing is the same modularization we as an application developer could also use. Okay? Now, where will it be useful to us? Is the when you build a library, okay, the interfaces are very important. What is public? What is not public? What is private? What is package private? Everything is very important because your library you will not know who in the world is using and what they are doing with it. Okay, so it's very important to protect your internal logic. It should not be overridden by anything. Okay, in Java, there was a flaw in till 1.8 that if something is packaged private, okay, and an outsider can use reflections. Reflection is a library, you know, right? So can use reflection and access that internal method, okay, which is package private. It was not supposed to be used by outsiders. That was the problem. And with modularization, what Java introduced also is that now you can explicitly mention that only these things are interface of a module. So now module also has it acts as a gate. It knows what has to be exposed, what does not have, what should be hidden. Right? So there is an extra layer which is which kind of gate keeps all the logic within your library, right? So that's the modularization. Java itself benefited. We also could benefit if you're building libraries and those kind of code, right? Little complex to, so there is a learning curve for that because a lot of additional syntax, the module itself got introduced, right? And that's the partially the reason why we have omitted that because if that is the first topic, I mean that will kill the interest for sure, right? So it needs probably half a day's session to understand what is modularization, how to use it.
So still, I think it's using, we can use with Azure, with 17 and all these versions.
Yes, Java 9 onwards.
But then we need to declare module and everything specify. Currently, we are not doing it. In 9, if we need to use modularity, then we need to declare, right? These are the modules.
Correct.
But in daily based Java, we are not doing it.
No, you don't need to.
Then we need to use the whole JDK, right? The way we are working 1.8.
Well, JDK is modularized. It's between JDK and the compiler. Right? We are getting benefited, but we don't have to do anything for that. See, earlier compiler was blind. That one library is connected to how many other libraries? It was blind within JDK. Okay. Now it knows. So it only loads which is what is needed.
Whatever the method or whatever the things we are using, all
Yes.
those things are.
So all the packages define what classes to import, right? So by that, compiler knows what is connected, what is not connected. But as a library, it does not. So that so we are getting benefited because of the footprint is reduced now, right? But we don't have to do anything for that, right?
Behind the scenes.
Yes, it's all under the hood, and like garbage collection and other things.
Now it's Meta, right? That's what-
Meta garbage collector.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a big topic again. So there have been so Shandan has been another garbage collector, and it's not getting solved somehow. So garbage collection has been so much of a sticky issue. They at least have two to three garbage collectors. They previewed, did alpha, then did beta, then didn't go ahead. So it's still a sticky issue. So
Because previously we need to define the space of the garbage collector. Now onward, they say it's broken. Now onward, we do not need to pass the parameter. Right? In initial stage, we are passing the parameter. But if some memory issue like that, then we need to increase the value of the memory into the parameter.
correct.
And that will be increase the garbage collection.
The scope of garbage collection.
Right? But now I think 8 onward, I'm not sure, but some version onward, we don't need to do all this stuff under the movies.
And again, the people who would be touching these things, right, in the developer community, would be only those who are trying to improve performance of an age-old product. Okay. Otherwise, nobody gets into these details, right? And even it needs a lot of experience and understanding of other fundamentals. Right? So that's the content that we wanted to discuss, and we also said that we'll have an open discussion around careers, and it's general topic, right? It's really an open discussion, right? I have just to kind of anchor the discussion, I have prepared a slide uh, just to get you guys started, right? Just keep on. Okay. I wanted to show one more thing. I'm not sure whether you guys look at these things or not, but to get an understanding of where the industry is going, trends, right? All those things. Some of these links are really useful. So first one is the Stack Overflow survey, right? So this comes out. Everyone uses Stack Overflow, and Stack Overflow till probably last 2 months back, it had an ad on the left top right that take the survey. Right? Probably nobody takes it, but there are so many people who have taken it. So this is the Stack Overflow survey, right? So basically, it gives you an understanding of where the things are, right? So if you look at this, so these are what programming, scripting, markup languages, right? Can you all see it? So JavaScript, HTML, CSS, SQL, Python, TypeScript, Java, right? And Bash, C Sharp, C++, whatnot. Go, Rust. Okay, this is 2022. Now, one interesting observation in this uh, is that the first 4 or 5, right, which are kind of leading ahead of Java, none of these are platform technologies, right? I can say that HTML, CSS, everyone it's like top, but you cannot build applications with that, right? Same thing goes with JavaScript, right? TypeScript, yes, with the Node JS coming in, it is getting a little bit of push, right? But again, you have been in a bank, I think a couple of other guys have been working with insurance and other uh, projects. Till now, I have not seen a single enterprise app built in Node. Okay? Yes, the web applications with simple or moderate size, they get built on Node. At this time, I don't know about the future where it will go, but till now, the de facto choice for all the enterprise applications, right? Be it banks, be it insurance, pharma, whatnot, right? Is Java and the frameworks around that, right? Uh, so if you are kind of trying to see where the career is in the long term, okay, looking at this data, okay, either you can go TypeScript and say that Node is going to be my thing, right, on the back end, or Java is the de facto thing since last 25 years, right? And what happens in 25 years is that ecosystem gets built, right? Libraries get built. So no new language, be it Python or whatever, they don't have the ecosystem that Java has, right? You look at Spring, it's a huge thing, correct? We have other JDK offshoots also, like we have Kotlin, we have Quarkus, right?
Zulu is also.
Yes. So all these things are there in the Java ecosystem, which is nowhere there, right? So this is one ThoughtWorks radar. This is another thing that I would recommend that everyone should look at, right? Because it gives you a good understanding of where things are moving, what new things are gaining traction, right? So if you look at let's look at languages and frameworks, right? So we look at, so these, so all the radars, radar is a kind of charting mechanism, right? It has four categories: adopt, trial, assess, and hold, right? And on the right hand side, or rather, you can just go here and see what it is, right? So all these are platform and technologies which they are assessing as a. So ThoughtWorks is a company. You guys are aware of that? ThoughtWorks. Martin Fowler. Who follows Martin Fowler? Okay, so that guy is. I mean, if you are going to stay in Java for long, okay, start reading book from Martin Fowler, right? Design patterns and it's so. I mean, it will differentiate you from a normal Java program, right? Your language in which you talk will change. Okay, so Martin Fowler is an author, right? And huh? Martin Fowler, Fowler, Martin Fowler. So Martin Fowler is part of this company, and so you see all these things are new in the market, and these guys are evaluating, doing trial, and all these things. Swift UI, test containers. So this is one good resource that will help you keep track of what is what's. Okay, last thing is the CNCF. Uh, who is aware of CNCF? CNCF is Cloud Native Foundation. Okay, so these guys are maintaining Kubernetes. These guys are doing a lot of other things, but all towards cloud. Okay, so Java is one thing you program, but now the deployment and release, everything has moved to cloud. Okay, so you also need to keep tabs on what is happening in here CNCF, right? So they're building tools around Kubernetes deployment, CI/CD. Security is a big thing now, right? Log4j incidents. Everyone had to kind of stay at night and fix those things, right? So after that, security is a big thing now. So CNCF is another. So they also publish a radar, right? So have a look at these things. Right? Now let me just bring out that one PPT which I've not prepared, but I've just jotted things down. Okay, and this is to just get our discussion started. Nothing more than that. This is not a definitive guide of how to take your career there, right? Uh, so what I have understood is that, and this goes beyond Java. Okay? This is not just Java. So three things: by skill, by domain, by segment. Okay? So if you look at your career and try to find out these three uh, aspects of your career, you will try to map other things also. For example, uh, we have different. Let's say look at the last segment, right? The industry segment. The IT companies fall into some of these segments. Consulting, right? So TCS consulting. So or the software consulting, right? Where you have your clients, you work for your clients, right? Like that. So that's the consulting. Captives. Now, captives are when company, any big company, is getting software built by others, and they have so much of software to build. What they do is they create their own team. Okay, so like Credit Suisse is a captive. Credit Suisse India is a captive. The development center here is a captive. Because Credit Suisse Bank has been, and then you know, right? So all TCS, Infosys, all these companies, what is the biggest vertical they have? Business vertical. They have verticals, right? Financials, they have pharma, they have products, they have insurance. Usually the financials and insurance are the biggest vertical, right? So banks like Credit Suisse have been giving a lot of money to TCS, Infosys, and these consulting people. They found out that let's do it on our own. Okay. The thing was the money. The second thing was the quality. Okay. So banks, even after giving money to TCS, Infosys, and these guys, they didn't get the good quality software back. Right. So they thought that okay, we'll hire our own developers and we'll get good quality software built on our own. So there are a lot of captives, right? All the banks, major banks have captives in India now, right? Uh, I think there is one captive from Bank of America in Gandhinagar. They have started. I don't know what's their size. They are there, right? There is one captive from SNP.
City, all are there.
Yes, they are in Pune. They are in Pune and Bangalore. So there are a lot of captives. So basically, captive is where you are employee of the bank itself. It's just that there you are in the software department for them. Then products is very simple to understand, right? Startups again simple to understand, right? It could be anything. They can be in financial services. They can be in whatnot, delivery, by domain. So one thing is to ask yourself which industry I am in, because each industry pays differently. They have different kind of culture, right? They have different kind of work itself. Okay, so if you go to startup, good pay, good work, right? Good fringe benefits, right? All kind of goodies you will get, right? No work-life balance. Okay, so there you are screwed. Correct. So that's typical startup. Okay, because they have to start up, they have to kind of do a lot of things in very short time and all, right? Product are probably you can chip in. What in your view is a culture of product company?
Product. Okay, so I was also part of PTC.
PTC, yes. So that's why.
So yeah, so both have a total different culture. If you go with the service, most of I work with the service company like Wipro, Credit Suisse, and Tensa. Okay. So so total different culture because product you they give you enough time, okay, to improve the product. Okay.
Good work-life balance.
Okay. And
Product
yes,
always.
definitely. Good life balance, good salary also compared to service. Okay. But there is also some limitation in some point. Okay. Uh, because they have a product, if you are good on that, means it's up to you in which department or which section you are working on. Okay. So compared to service, I think product is good. Still, I believe.
So product has certain downsides. Okay, they
Yeah,
pay
that
well.
also.
They pay well, but product you have to make sure, because products live for 10 years, 15 years, 20
So
years.
long time you don't aware about the how the trend in what the things going on in the market.
So if you want, you can retire from a product company. It is like that. Okay, with good work-life balance. But the problem is you are stuck with that one product for a very long time. With that tech stack, products are not agile. They cannot change stack overnight. Okay, they won't say that okay, today is Java, let's build it in Node, because it's like 10 years of work gone into that product, that software. They don't move slowly. I don't say they don't move, but they move slowly. Right? Startups, we consulting. I think most of us are in the consulting, so we know what goes in. So a lot of people traverse their career in this last thing, right? So they don't have any binding of which domain they work in or which skill they have. They pick up skills, but because the pay grades are different in consulting products, startups, and all, people traverse like that in their career, okay, to kind of get a higher pay grade or better work. Uh, then there are certain people who are bounded by their domain. Okay, these are those business analyst people. Okay, or probably if you have worked as a software engineer in a domain for a very long time, right? You become bounded by that. So, for example, e-commerce. Okay, building a cart for Flipkart or Amazon itself is a big chunk of software. Okay. Now, if you have worked in e-commerce for let's say 7 to 10 years, and if I suddenly put you in something like PTC, okay, you will not get anything. I mean, the stack would be different. People would be of a different mindset. Okay, everything would be different. So then your domain is also becomes a constraint there, right? The thing about skills. Okay, so then there are people like who are just focused on skills. Give me work in Java and X number of X amount in the salary, and I'll work. I don't mind which domain. I don't mind that. Right? It's like me and my Java thing. I'll give me good work. Don't put me in the maintenance project, and I'm set. Okay. So the people, and in the initial stage of career, right? People usually are in the either first or the last segment. They are kind of moving their career in those lines, right? One thing that I have experienced and which I wanted to share is about tools. Okay, tools means uh, you must have seen people who are working in SAP ABAP. Okay, you must have seen people who are working in some kind of uh, let's say the tools that create websites very fast. What is it? CMSs, WordPress, CMSs, right? If you go into bigger companies, enterprise, right, you will find people who are working on ETL tools and Informatica.
One
Okay,
of my friend, 2006 onward, he's working on the, IBM has their own mail, mail feature. But still he's working on the same. Nothing else. He don't know anything about
so getting into tools has good side and a bad side. Okay, tools, if they are right now in the market and tool itself is kind of expanding, you will expand like anything. I mean, people will be ready to pay you anything. Okay, tools are like that. Okay, then, but as soon as that tool, and one is that you forget your Java, you forget anything. You just know how to use that tool. Okay. At the moment when the tool goes out of the favor of market, nobody's buying that tool. Okay. I don't know what you'll do with your career because now nobody's buying that tool. Nobody wants people who work on that tool. Okay, and this has happened. I've seen this happening firsthand when people with 15 years of career on tools, they were lost. That what should I do now? Right. One good example has been the mainframes. Mainframes had very specific languages, COBOL and stuff, right? And still today there are people who are working in COBOL. They are only working in those companies which still have mainframes, right? But for them, it's a very small pond, right? Only 5 companies are working in mainframes. They can either go here or there, right? They're stuck. One more example is one of the ETL tools, Ab initio. How many of you have heard Ab initio? Ab initio is big time in ETL, okay, extract, transform, load. People in Ab initio. So what has happened, and I've seen it in my past companies also, but Ab initio charges very high license fees. Okay, and then even big companies started feeling the pinch. They said, no, okay, we don't want to. We start moving out of Ab initio. Okay, till the time they had Ab initio, they had big teams of Ab initio. Okay, now those Ab initio developers who are 15 years experienced in Ab initio, they were learning Java or whatever. I mean, whatever they wanted to, but they had to get out of it because the market is shrinking of that tool. So tool has pros and cons. Okay, you will get a very good hike if it tool is going up, but you will come down with it. Okay.
Nowadays, trend is very moving very fast compared to there. Everybody need to migrate. Everybody need to update. The way actually is going, and everything need to be fast and connected and reliable, easy to expand.
Yes.
So tool has those limitations. It is difficult to scale, especially horizontal either or it's vertical.
Yes.
So it's difficult to scale. So that's the main problem with any of the tools.
Any of the tools.
Tightly covered.
So as compared to that, the platform technologies like .NET, Java, right, Node, Python, these are more free form. They will build over a period of time, become more and more mature and rich in the ecosystem, and you'll kind of consistently get benefited with that, right? So these are some of the things. I mean, if you guys have anything to share from your experiences, I mean, we have a lot of people who are sufficiently experienced to talk about the career and stuff like that. Oh, by the way, I think we are done almost, okay, on time. So this is going to be a discussion. We are going to stay here for some time. Whoever wants to stay and share, talk, welcome. Otherwise, if you have time constraints, you can leave. That is also fine. So anyone who wants to share anything about, yes,
Like in my last company, that's all system.
yes,
They own a lot of kind of products they have. Mainly major pioneering in what is exactly there is a tool for analytics. It's a very big tool for analytics. Basically, there is another one called Cncf. It's the major tool used by major airlines for any airplane which they want to model into 3D. So I was given a chance to work on this tool. But then I made a choice to go with the platform instead of the tools because these tools are used by few companies. Let's say, like if I take an example of analytics, there are few companies that they work on, and there are few companies that provide services on it. Like I get it out of my hands basically that many companies are there. Even if I wanted to work, I was not able to. The second reason was they were using DS. This is I'm talking about 2
it's a
years
product.
back.
So it is going to stay there for
And then
long.
this DS, it has been active since years now. But they were still using DS. So I did not choose that part personally.
So, and similar thing is MATLAB. Right? MATLAB is so niche that if you know MATLAB, you'll be paid. Okay, that is given. But then your career life cycle is as good as MATLAB only.
Especially it's used for mathematical,
Yeah, it's very niche. And then the another problem is you don't get those jobs every day. Okay, you can't go to, let's say, Ahmedabad. I don't think
license
that
fee is very high, very expensive.
very so only